6 o'clock, so we'll make a start on tonight's Council Cabinet business. First of all, we have apologies from Councillors Eldred and Councillor Banwaite, who's stuck in traffic at the moment, so may join us in a little while to record his apologies. Any other apologies? No, okay. Late items, I'm not aware of any. No. Receipt of petitions, there are none. Identification of urgent items to which call-in will not apply, there are none. Are there any declarations of interest? No. And minutes of meetings held on the 5th of August. If that's an accurate record, I'll accept those. Thank you. Okay, before we begin, I'd just like to welcome Philip Hutchinson, who's our newly elected youth mayor. So Philip's going to be getting involved in Cabinet and various different parts of the workings of the council. So welcome, Philip, and please do feel free to contribute if there's, you've got any questions or any points that you'd like to make during the course of the meeting. Item 7 is recommendations from Corporate Scrutiny and Governance Board, which I think have been circulated. We'll deal with those as we go through the agenda. So moving on to the key decisions then, item 8 is Health Watch Derby funding arrangements. And I think that's Councillor Repton to present that one.
Item 8.
Item 8.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the Health Watch. Carry on.
March 2019. In terms of some of the responsibilities of the Health Watch Derby, there are a variety which I can't lay my hands on at the moment, but I will come back to that. So one of the main ones, though, are enabling people to monitor services and to review the commissioning and provision of local care services, obtaining the views of people about their needs for and their experience of local care services, making their views, such as are mentioned at C, known, and reports and recommendations about how local care services could or ought to be improved to persons responsible for commissioning, providing, managing or scrutinising local care services, providing advice and information about access to local care services and about choice that may be made with respect to aspects of those services to the public. They are also responsible for reaching the views on local care services and making those known to Health Watch England Committee of the Care Quality Commission. And finally, making recommendations to Health Watch England about special reviews or investigations to conduct via CQC, giving that committee such assistance as it may require to enable it to carry out its functions effectively, efficiently and economically. So the recommendations are there, Chair. I put those to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Repton, for that really helpful overview. In terms of recommendations from scrutiny, you'll see that there were no recommendations made to Council or Cabinet on this item. However, the Board recommend that the Protecting Vulnerable Adults Board continue to work closely with and monitor the work and performance of Healthwatch Derby. So I'm sure that will be welcomed. Any questions or comments, please? No, if not, I shall put that to Cabinet members then for, if you could show your vote, please, for recommendation 2.1 as set out by Councillor Repton. Yeah, that's agreed, thank you. So I shall hand over to Councillor Banwaite now for item 9.
Okay, agenda item number 9. That's over to Councillor Hussain, please. Cabinet Member for Urban Renewal to present revisions to the written statements for mobile homes.
Thank you, Chair. The written statement provides a legal agreement between Derby City Council and the residents of mobile home sites. The written statement also sets out rights and responsibilities of each party to the agreement. The main change proposed to the agreement is set out in paragraph 1.2, bullet point 3. Basically, we are seeking to separate water charges and the rent which we charge. And we think it will actually simplify and it will make it easier for people to understand what rent they are supposed to be paying, because when it's mixed up with the water charges, it confuses people. That is the main change to the current agreement. So I recommend that we accept the recommendation set out in 2.1.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hussain. Any questions, comments from anyone, please? Okay, so the recommendations are set out in the report and presented by Councillor Hussain. Does Cabinet... Councillor Hussain?
Before you take the vote on it, the board recommended that the council legal team double checks that the written statement accurately reflects the latest legislation prior to the approval by the council. Can you, yes, if you could just ask.
Yes, Councillor Hussain, thank you very much for reminding us. Yes, the open scrutiny board recommendation was that the council's legal team double check that the written statements accurately reflect the latest legislation prior to approval by council cabinet. So over to the monitoring officer for that.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that we have double-checked the legislation and the advice in the report. All of the legislative provisions are accurately referred to, and the model statement does accurately reference the legislation. So we are happy with it.
Okay, Cabinet to approve the recommendations following that clarification from the monitoring officer. Cabinet to approve. Show of hands, please. Thank you very much. Okay, agenda item number 10, Contract and Financial Procedures Matters Report. Just to summarise that the report considers 2 areas. Firstly, there are changes to the capital programme totalling £142,000. The programme changes relate to a £45,000 increase to the Parks and Open Spaces programme for the Alveston Park BMX project, funded from a grant from Sport England. So really good news for Alveston. An £80,000 increase to the CYP programme for the boiler at Ivy House School in order to prevent heating failures and school closure implications, brought forward from next year's programme. A £17,000 increase to the CYP programme as part of the school expansion scheme to provide additional places at Walter Evans Church of England Primary School. These additional works are required to address significant site level difficulties on the school's playground. This has also been brought forward from next year's programme. Secondly, there is a proposed use of £300,000 from the Corporate Budget Risk Reserve to undertake consultation on the service area needs assessment, reported to and approved by Council Cabinet as agenda item number 2 on 15th of July 2015. The Council's budget over the next 3 years requires a further £50 million of cuts. Therefore, it is vital that we undertake a series of detailed consultation exercises to inform the budget process and ensure that any decisions taken are safe from judicial review. The commissioning of services to undertake the consultation is the next phase. The balance of the budget risk reserve will stand at £24.2 million following this decision. And it's just worth pointing out that the level of funding money that we've got to set aside for this consultation is a clear reflection on the extensive consultation we have undertaken. And it is based upon experience of what other local authorities have undertaken. You know, kick-starting consultation on key services. But this is really an important opportunity for us to carry out a quality piece of work, talking to the people of Derby about the impact of government cuts on services and how we can, at the same time, continue to provide a focus of services to address current need. So we are committed to those services that we have started a consultation. They are absolutely essential public services to the city. They're the lifeblood. We're opposed, as I said, we've said on numerous occasions. The Labour administration is reluctantly undertaken those consultations. But as a result of our Fair Deal for Derby campaigning, with no support, may I add, from either the Conservatives or Liberal Democrats, we have been down to London. We've met the Minister, Marcus Jones. So, as I said, no thanks to the local Conservatives and Liberal Democrats, but certainly their national politicians seem to have something about them, and certainly we can work with the new Secretary of State, Greg Clark, and the Minister for Local Government, Marcus Jones. So the delegation, which was obviously included myself, the Deputy Leader, Councillor Rawson, the Chief Exec, Paul Robinson, obviously the Monitoring Officer, also David Williams, representing businesses as Chair of the Renaissance Board, we feel was a very, very positive meeting. Government understood the presentation we made about our numbers. They have no desire to come into the city and to run our finances for us. They have confidence in what we're doing to try to put things right. They equally recognise that councils like Derby are starting to come under massive pressure, and they are willing to listen. So there will be now an ongoing dialogue with government. It's taken 5 years. Give credit to this Secretary of State. To be fair, it's been much quicker. But the Fair Deal for Derby campaign is moving on, is finally progressing. But I say it is a strike contrast to the failure of the local Conservatives and Liberal Democrats who've refused on numerous occasions. And the final point I would like to make is it was said to us, is this cross-party by the MP Amanda Soloway, which I had to explain to the MP that we've taken numerous motions to the council chamber. They've all been rejected by the Conservatives and Liberal Democrats. I've also publicly said at Cabinet and apologised if our initial Fair Deal for Derby campaign was overtly political for them. And I have also offered both Councillor Hickson and Councillor Jones to help draft a terms of reference for a new campaign. They have consistently refused to cooperate or even enter into a dialogue. So you can't do any more than that. And so we have also brought that to the attention of the Member of Parliament for Derby that asked that particular question. So whilst it is sad that we have to go through this consultation, we know where we are. We're hoping that the discussions with government over the next few months and hopefully over the next period will mean, hopefully, that we'll be able to revise our financial projections with some clear, strong announcements from government as following the October spending review. So I think it's important to put that into context when we talk about the consultation and why we're doing the consultation, why it's the amount that we costed to set that aside. It's not to say we're going to spend that much, but it is a safe number to put aside. So, as a result of that, any questions about the actual contract and financial procedures matters from anyone? Councillor Repton, please.
I am surprised that Councillor Hickson had a lot to say about our offices and about us on Radio Derby, say such vitriol for the airways of Radio Derby rather than share them here in a democratic forum. He accused our officers of being useless and almost implied, why didn't we stick with the previous chief executive, that chief executive who was featured in rotten boroughs in Private Eye. Scurrilously perhaps, but perhaps not, but certainly he seems to be a great favourite of Councillor Hickson. And Councillor Hickson was saying, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong, what I heard was that it's a total waste of time spending £300,000. We don't need to do. Well, my understanding, Councillor Hickson, as yours should be, of a council of many years, that statutorily we have to go through this process. You know that. You also said that we're incompetent, and you gave the impression, and I think you used probably words stronger than that it was dead easy. that there was no financial problems at all that could easily be resolved. There's no financial crisis. If only we saved 2 and 6pence here, 2 and 6pence there. If you were in power, it'd be a doddle. There'd be no problems at all. Everything would be fine. The public wouldn't face all the threats. Now, something's wrong with the rhetoric that you had on Radio Derby and your silence here, Councillor Hickson. I think you ought to raise the questions rightly with these, or you call incompetent officers and us as incompetent councillors, the concerns that you have. And please share with us your knowledge, how we can do this painlessly, and share with us how we can avoid spending 300,000. I mean, you know, if you've got ideas, I'd love to hear them. But the silence is deafening. So I presume we can't take you seriously. And certainly the public can't. I was disappointed, but you're not prepared to speak now. And the silence says everything, doesn't it? You know full well, Councillor Hickson, that these cuts are not easily made. You know full well that we have to go through a consultation process and it costs money. You know also that we have some excellent officers working under incredible circumstances. So I think to slag them off in the way that you did, I think deserves an apology here this evening to our officers. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions or contributions from anybody? Or, okay. So, subject to the following recommendation from overview scrutiny, the board resolved to recommend to Council Cabinet that in future the contract and financial procedures matters report should include further context and a breakdown in figures in relation to the use of reserves and changes to the capital programme. So I'm happy to put that to Cabinet and adopt that, and our finance officer is nodding. So Cabinet to approve the report as laid out, subject to that, accepting that recommendation from the board as well. Can I show of hands, please? Thank you very much. Okay, so agenda item number 11 is a review of Derby City Council's diversity forums. Can we have an officer just to make... Yeah, Heather Greening's here. Heather, please, over to you.
Thank you. The Council has had a long history of engaging with Derby's local communities, and this has been an integral part of our approach, actually using diversity forums, some of which have been in place since the 1980s. A summary of the achievements of the diversity forums in the last year, so 14-15, are actually shown as part of this report. In light of reducing resources, we have had to review how diversity forums operate to make sure they are effective in light of the reducing resources, but also delivering good outcomes for the city. In February, we worked with forum members to carry out an equality impact assessment as part of our budget proposals to mitigate those changes. The equality impact assessment recommended the review as to how the forums work, including looking at current format, activity, representation, and consulting with relevant groups. We've worked over the last few months to do that. On the 23rd of July, we held a session for all forum members, member champions, and also council officers to discuss the options going forward. This report presents the findings and full options appraisal within the report. It's recommended to change the format and the structure of the diversity forum, so to move away from 4 forums as they currently operate and combine into one. The new forum will meet more regularly to enable the raising of issues on a timely basis with greater opportunity to influence decision making. As part of these sessions, group discussions will continue to take place in accordance with existing equality characteristics, so for example whether that be disability, so that we can continue to meet specific needs. Okay. A further equality impact assessment is being carried out on the proposals, and that's also shown at Appendix 4. We did include some of those actions in a revised version of the report. Okay. Okay,
thank you. Any questions or contributions from anyone? Okay, Cabinet to approve the recommendations set out in the report. Can I show... beg your pardon. Subject to the recommendation from... from Overview and Scrutiny Board, which is the board resolved to support the recommendations to Council Cabinet and request that a review of the changes be reported to the Corporate Scrutiny and Governance Board in the next municipal year. So Cabinet to approve, together with that recommendation from the board. Thank you very much. The final item is opportunities for overseas economic twinning. Colleagues, we have really an exciting opportunity as a city, a major city, to start building and developing our own international links. With a focus of developing what we can do to enhance and develop further those that we already have on our doorstep. That's Toyota. It's to credit to, it was David Bookbinder's great vision, the former Labour leader, that had this vision to bring jobs and regeneration at a major employer, international employer, in the form of Toyota to Derby. He succeeded in that vision, and he deserves great recognition for that. He's obviously no longer involved in local in politics, but clearly, you know, David Bookbinder did play a very important role. So that's laid the foundations. I think it's now an exciting opportunity for us to see what's the next discussions we can have with Toyota, particularly around the next generation of technology that's going to fuel the future concept, you know, the future, now currently the concept car, but the future cars of the world, utilising the latest environmentally friendly technology. We want to make sure that those next cars are built right here in Derby. Clearly that will require commitment from the company, investment in their plant machinery. So we should never accept the fact that Toyota's, you know, here today. We want to make sure they continue to be here tomorrow and into the future. So that's what's right on our doorstep. But secondly, I think there's an opportunity to work with the emerging countries. China is one of the fastest growing economies in the world and have been for a number of years. They have a massive population, a massive consumer market there. Clearly they have a focus at the moment in fulfilling their current needs, but I think in the future there will be opportunities for other countries, and certainly to build stronger links with Europe. And that's why, I may add, it's absolutely vital that we continue to stay in Europe. I think to cut ourselves off and to weaken ourselves will force companies like Toyota and those great Chinese companies to simply ignore us. It is the fact we've been part of a strong, vibrant Europe that has enabled us to attract and retain companies like Toyota. So international twinning, I think, is absolutely vital. I think at a time, you know, clearly government have talked, this current government, and you know, they're in power for another 5 years, have said austerity is sadly here to stay for the long term. We simply can't rely upon this government. We've got to start, you know, playing to our strengths as a major, as a major local city in our own right. And I think the timing's perfect as well. Devolution gives us exciting opportunities. Our growing and stronger relationships with our neighbouring authorities, and I look at our friends in the county, our friends at Nottingham City Council, you know, forged through the HS2 and the devolution discussions. So all these pieces of a very vital jigsaw in terms of having a vibrant economy that continues to address challenges for the future are now starting to fall in place. The next component is a key one, is having a vision, a global vision. The previous administrations didn't have that. I would love to pay a bit of credit to when the Conservatives were in. They did look at twinning, so I'm not going to say we're trying to reinvent the wheel, but beyond just simply talking about it, they did nothing to develop it. I really don't know why they didn't look any further. If they'd done that, we would have been about 4 or 5 years ahead. That is a lost opportunity. That is a failure of leadership at the time, but we will grasp this opportunity and not with both hands. We are hoping to have a Chinese delegation here over the next couple of weeks. There's just some final details being worked out, but that will be a start. That's come coincidentally, I have to say, because again there is a desire from countries like China to build those links with cities that want to listen to what they've got to say. So I have to just make sure we meet our expectations. This is for the long term. You can't just simply walk into countries like China and walk out with business. It takes years and years of nurturing those relationships. There's obviously the language and cultural differences, but clearly there is a desire to develop trade and international links. So I think we have, by working closely with Nottingham and sharing their experience, Nottingham, through their stable leadership, have been working through their university connections. I think we can replicate that, and Nottingham are prepared to share their contacts with us. So as per the Derby Evening Telegraph headlines you may have seen that were front pages, I think that's testament to this administration and the partnerships and how successful way we're working with businesses, not just in the city but in the region. So I think it would not be accurate if anybody says that Labour doesn't work with businesses. We are very hungry to develop those links. And, I have to pay tribute to Councillor Rawson, as our Cabinet Member for Regeneration, who's worked tirelessly over the last couple of years in supporting local businesses. So, colleagues, let's take it to the next level now, and let's reach out to the rest of the world. As I said, I come back to this point, it's the wrong time to close our doors, to pull up the drawbridges, as clearly UKIP want to do, through this kind of fear of the world and fear of anything that's foreign and alien. That is take a backward step. It's a step in history which ended with the Second World War and the end of dictatorship. So that is not where we want to go back to. The world we live in a global world. We are one human race. We should unite with our brothers and sisters in the world, irrespective of what countries they are or what language they speak. There is trade to be had there, plenty, and now is the opportunity to work together. So that's the future, colleagues. This report maps that out, and I'll just take contributions now, and before I put that recommendation to Cabinet. Councillor Repton, please.
Yes, certainly support. I think it's exciting times, Chair, and certainly this city will do whatever it can to both protect the employment that we have in this city and to attract further inward investment. And I think that when we don't want anything that blows us off course from those aims and objectives, and our electorate would expect nothing the less from us to attract those jobs, to safeguard those jobs and the standard of living people have in this city. There is one big cloud, as we know, on the horizon, and that is current people of investment in this city, firms and future ones will be looking very closely at this city over the coming years. And nothing must happen to this city in terms of its quality of life and public services that turns those investors off. And that's why, despite all that I said earlier, Councillor Nixon, because I think sometimes these things have to be said, the truth sometimes hurts. But let me give you a bit of praise. When the chips were down over Bombardier, you grew a backbone and stood up. Then it is now time to awaken again and support our efforts to get inward investment and protect the city from meltdown. You can have an influence in terms of this government, and Amanda Soloway can as well, to make sure that we protect the vital public services which will play a major part in inward investment and retaining investment to this city. Without that, we could see the tumbleweed blowing across parts of this city. That mustn't be allowed to happen. So it is really good news. But there is the words earlier of the leader that your help is needed in terms of supporting us in our efforts to protect our public services. But coming back to the news this evening, excellent news. We will develop a good working relationship with the Chinese as we have with the Japanese. We will protect inward investment. We will protect people's standards of living. But we all have to be pulling in the same direction. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, a good number of speakers. Councillor Jones, please.
Thank you, Chair. I had the opportunity when I was leader to meet a trade delegation from China, so I'm really pleased that we are building on that. I know that's now a long time ago. However, one of the things that I did think about afterwards was how we evaluate the effectiveness of spending whatever we need to spend to entertain them here or to go and visit them on their patch, as it were. So how are you going to evaluate the effectiveness, and where are you going to find the money from? Because you said earlier that we are a cash-strapped council, as it were.
Okay, well, this will be a capital cost, so it's not a revenue pressure. So, again, we will look at the experiences of our neighbouring authorities. And, what this report does is gives us an opportunity, a start, to set some funding aside so we can continue that dialogue. I think we have to kind of review it. But clearly, the starting point is relationships. And I think let's start those discussions and see where it takes us. I think we have to be mindful of the cost, of course we do. But we've got to put an investment in the short term. The alternative is a race to the bottom, which, as I said, you've been part of a government policy which has seen that. You've not to offer up solutions, to simply say, well, accept cuts and keep driving down services and not to fight back. Here's an exciting opportunity to fight back. And actually, I have to say, if you look at the Toyota example, that came at a cost, and look at how successfully that was. And again, you kind of give praise to David Bookbinder. I can't give you any tribute, I'm afraid. you've had talks, but nothing's come of it. It seems to you simply lack the vision to progress and do anything with it, and that's really, really disappointing. That's very much what's come back from the Chinese. Is look, you're kind of like good at scratching on the surface, but you don't seem to be in it for the long term. So you kind of clearly made that decision you took then and had that lack of vision and lack of leadership. We're not prepared to make those same mistakes, and now more than ever, we need to at least begin this journey, and it is a journey. It's very much a long-term journey, but we're certainly excited about it. Maybe that's why you're sat there and we've been given this opportunity to show strong leadership to the city. And the Liberal Democrats are on their knee, are where they are nationally. And that's probably a reflection on the way they've gone about things. So are there any I think we've got our youth mayor wants to ask a question. Thank you.
Yeah, I grew up in China myself, and it presents itself as a fantastic opportunity. But a question I do have is, how do we make sure as the council that we make the most of this opportunity in an economic perspective, and it doesn't just become a civic thing where it's just in word we're twinned, and how can we make the most of it to utilise the jobs that this opportunity could present itself with?
Okay. As part of those discussions, we're going to develop a clear strategy. And the vision, and that's the starting point, has to be the vision, is Derby is well placed, it's a central location, so we're not talking about tourist links. We want Derby to be a destination for businesses, for why shouldn't Chinese business people, rather than go to London, why shouldn't we draw them to come to Derby? It's perfectly placed, we've got an airport on our doorstep. For them, the distances are small in comparison. Why shouldn't we encourage them to come here and take their business trips out into Europe, use our excellent hotel offering, and that's going to get better and better, and we're looking to develop more 5-star hotels. That is the reason we're doing that is to be able to attract more businesses to come and use Derby as a destination. We're perfectly placed. And if you look at our devolution agenda, that's all about saying how can we work with our neighbouring authorities and collectively, work as an economic powerhouse. So if we're serious about making the Midlands an economic powerhouse, and we haven't been in the past, governments are giving us that opportunity. I say the Secretary of State and the devolution meeting, where I'm sat here, you had Greg Clark and you had Michael Heseltine sat right there. This is very much what they're talking about. We do have a Secretary of State now that actually believes in empowering local authorities. But with that, the message is absolutely clear. If we're going to give you powers, what are you going to do with those powers? Are you really ambitious about those powers? There's no point asking for these powers from government. It will look absolutely ridiculous if we turn around and take that philosophy. Oh, well, actually, I want a rock-solid guarantee that we're going to get X by X by this date. That just absolutely, there is always an element of risk in something. Of course there is. That's business. If you're an entrepreneur, that is the basis of being a successful entrepreneur. History is littered with them. And political entrepreneurs, exactly the same way. And I look back at the Toyota model. Toyota was hugely successful. And I'm prepared to even speak to David Bookbinder. David Bookbinder, if anybody saw his comments in the Derby Telegraph, said, I'm prepared to share his experience. And I've actually spoken to David Bookbinder yesterday, may I add. I was saving it for another moment. The reason I refer to David Bookbinder, but David's offered that opportunity to work with us and share his experience. What excellent advice from somebody that's gone in there and done it. I'm not sure if Councillor Jones was able to speak to David about that, but we've got somebody who's a hugely iconic figure in the city in attracting Toyota here, worked tirelessly to do that. So I don't have all the answers I have to say at this moment in time, but I do know people out there that have got that. And there's a real strong desire from the business community to work with us on that. But the first starting point has to be, let's start having those conversations. In terms of your point about civic, the Osnabrück one is exactly that. It's mainly a civic relationship. That's a question for the City of Derby. I mean, clearly there are no plans to put that aside, but that's simply born out of the Second World War. I'm not sure how relevant it is to economic trade to the city today, but it seems to work for us on a civic basis. This is not about civic. Nobody's talking about going along to China, places like that, just to shake a few hands and come back. But the reality is, if we're going to build relationships with these countries so that our future generation can benefit, maybe we've got to put that investment in the short to medium term to get those rewards in the long term. Councillor Hussain, please.
I think the questions which are being raised, what are we going to get in return for the investment that we are making? The investment that we are making is actually a very small amount. There's an old maxim which says, you have to speculate to accumulate. So we've got to make a bit of an investment to open up the links. But if you look at the state of our economy, we've got a huge trade deficit. It's around about 6% of our GDP. So we've got to look at every opportunity where our exporters can access markets. And once we have those links, then we can actually take trade delegations, not at our expense. They can afford to pay for their own costs, for their own expense. But if we could increase, and if other councils started to do the same, and we could increase the items that we can export to markets like India and China and close the gap, the trade gap, that would be a huge service to the country. Although the Chancellor is taking lots and lots of credit for the economy at the moment, but the trade gap is actually growing significantly. At some point, this will create financial crisis unless these problems are actually addressed. And the only way we can do is make sure our exporters or potential exporters have proper access to all the markets throughout the world.
Councillor Rawson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I really welcome this report. I think it's a big opportunity for us in the city in terms of developing these links and these relationships, which ultimately are going to lead to jobs for our constituents, for people in Derby. I'm sure at the time before Toyota decided to let here the naysayers who complained about it'll never go to anything or it's not worth making investment. But if you look at Toyota now, the people who are employed there and all the supply chain that relate, then there's a lead said led by the county council at the time, David Bookbinder, has paid huge dividends. Many millions of pounds have flowed back into the local economy. And in terms of manufacturing here in Derby, we're really well placed to take advantage of those links. Our companies that are based here, they're in a good position to win contracts. And if you look at the economy of China, there's been a huge change. There's been the emergence of the middle class. People have moved from the countryside into cities. People have become very prosperous in China. And that's created a huge market of people who potentially are going to buy goods and services off companies in Derby. So there's a real opportunity for an export-led economic recovery in this country by creating those links. And ultimately it's about relationship building as in any business. So companies in China are going to actually do business with people who they know and trust and who they've got those links with. So I think it's really important for us to be out there and developing those links. Just in terms of a couple of areas, we've talked about manufacturing that could very well benefit and our exporters, but also the university here in Derby. There's a massive market now from Chinese students and other emerging countries in the world to come abroad, study abroad, and of course they bring money to spend in our local economy. And bringing the knowledge and the skills that they have. And also in terms of tourism, we're on the edge of the Peak District here, a fantastic resource, and at the moment Chinese visitors, the majority stay in London, and yet when you think about the distances that people in China are used to travelling, it'd be really no problem whatsoever for those Chinese visitors to come and stay in Derby and Derbyshire to enjoy the Peak District. So the opportunities really are endless, and I really do welcome this paper as the first step in terms of starting to develop those links.
Excellent, Councillor Rawson. Thank you very much for those comments. I just want to I wanted to address, make one final point in Councillor Jones's comment. I just want to remind you, Councillor Jones, you do have form for not grasping excellent opportunities, and rather than you can look at the international one, but let me remind you of one closer to home. Just to remind you that you were part of a Liberal Democrat administration that rejected the opportunity to bring Westfield to Derby. And that was said by Westfield themselves. When I first went on a tour on Westfield, before it was opened with the then leader, Chris Williamson, I think there was a few members of the cabinet there. I'm sure if Alan, if you went with us at the time, when they were still building it and they were putting the windows in, it was just practically partly a shell. And they said, we're so relieved. And we said, oh, this is great. You know, he says, can I just say we attribute this down to you? I said, well, what about the past? He said, well, Liberal Democrats, we took the idea to them. They rejected it. We lost a few years there. So you can't trust Councillor Jones when it comes to, you know, looking at a vision for the city. If they've said no to Westfield, and look at how successful that was, you know, it says it all. So I'm sorry to say, Councillor Jones, I think our youth mayor has got more sense than he's not even a councillor. So perhaps your next stage is to enter local politics, so you can you know, share your advice on a bigger stage. So so really important contributions from everybody except Councillor Jones. Is Cabinet, before I put this recommendation, in fact, actually, I have to say, give credit to the Cross-Party Overview and Scrutiny Board. Their recommendation is the board resolved to support the recommendations to Council Cabinet and request that Marketing Derby should be included in the list of key stakeholders for exploring and delivering these opportunities. So there is some sense, cross-party at Overview Scrutiny, if there isn't from their leadership representatives here. Cabinet to approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so that brings the meeting to an end. Thank you very much.